Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Equine Episode Examination, where today we'll be discussing episode number 13 of Season 7, The Perfect Pear. So definitely an episode that many of us have been waiting for them to tackle, or at least something like it, for a while now. So finally going to get to discuss this, which is pretty exciting. So yeah, hopefully everyone's here that needs to be here because we got a lot to discuss today. So clear out your schedules for the rest of the day. We'll be here for a while probably. If this episode is any indication, just the music alone is going to take a couple hours to discuss. So, anyway, if this is your first time, we'll go ahead and get started. If this is your first time here watching Triple E, welcome. We do record these live on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So if you're watching this in recording and would like to participate in a future discussion of a future episode we'll be talking about, we do these every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time at CinemaQuestria.com, so you can just come over there and participate. If you are watching the stream somewhere else other than CinemaQuestria.com and you want to participate in the live chat as well, you just have to go to CinemaQuestria.com/stream, and you can embed the stream there, as well as launch our Discord or IRC chats in order to participate in the episode discussion, text discussion along with us today. In addition to myself, we do have a couple people here in the voice chat that will also be discussing the episode. I'm Rain Shadow, if you did not know.
Hey guys, it's Mr. Ben.
This is Jay Smith.
And we won't dilly-dally around any longer here because we do have a lot to discuss today. So, Perfect Pear. What are everyone's initial thoughts on Perfect Pear?
This was probably one of the best episodes of season. Pretty much right up there with A Royal Problem, if not beating it outright almost.
Mm-hmm.
This was a episode practically 7 seasons in the making. For the first time we've gotten some information. Applejack's parents have gotten front and center. We've finally answers to several questions. Mind you, we still have several questions that are, a lot of these do raise up more questions, but we do get to know, what they look like. We get to know some names. The biggest question is we don't exactly know exactly what happened, but we kind of got some unofficial confirmation that yes, it does prove, at least more or less, prove some fan theories that they're no longer with us.
Yeah, I mean, just holy crap! I mean, what an episode! I mean, regardless, I mean, putting aside the episode itself for a second, I mean, this is, like Mr. Ben said, a topic that we've been waiting for pretty much since the first season of the show to really find out, and now up to this episode, we found out about, or seen and found out about, all the other main six's parents, with the exception of Applejack. I mean, last season we saw Fluttershy. Earlier this season we saw Rainbow Dash's parents for the first time as well. So they're definitely getting to those very quickly these past 2 seasons, because it has been a long time since the series started, and we've never really heard about them. And Applejack's parents are definitely some of the most mysterious, being that they're all about family, and they live with Granny Smith, their grandma, and so definitely a lot of questions that people have been having for a while. And just wow, I mean, again, Joe and Christine just have not been pulling any punches in terms of this season, and tackling these big episodes. I mean, already, I'll say last season I loved season 6 in so many ways. It was very hard for it to top season 5, just because season 5, it wasn't just the quality of the episodes, it was kind of the content they covered. There's a lot of kind of really big episodes in that season that had, like Amending Fences and other episodes like that. Of course, the 100th episode, that are just kind of hard to compete with because they're such big episodes. This season has already kind of reached that level of season 5 in terms of the episodes that it has covered already. And I mean, we had, this episode with Applejack's parents. We had, like Mr. Ben mentioned earlier, the other episode that they had wrote this season, Royal Problem, where we finally kind of get to see a Celestia and Luna, very centered episode on them. and how they interact with each other nowadays on a day-to-day basis. And that's something I know that a lot of people have been waiting for again for a long time. And then, like I mentioned before, just a few episodes before that, we got to see Rainbow Dash's parents, which is another one of the main six we had never seen or heard about their parents really in the series before. So it's certainly been a very, very interesting season with just a lot of episodes that people have been waiting for them to cover for a while, and they're finally getting to them. But yeah, on a quality aspect, even just throwing out the fact that this is an episode regarding Applejack's parents, just on an episode level, it was such a good episode. It took a very simple and you might call cliche concept, kind of a sort of Romeo and Juliet type story, and just really did it the absolute best they could do. Just beautiful writing and dialogue and music, and it just was such a beautiful episode, and it's really hard to top a Royal Problem, but I really think this does top it for me, even if it might have been on the same level as story, just because of the topic it covered, and how well it covered it. It was definitely probably my favorite episode of the season so far, and definitely up there in my like top 3 of the show. So let's just we'll go ahead and we'll get into it then with the story and the writing. As I mentioned, this episode was written by the season 7 story editors Joanne Lewis and Christine Zonko. Previously, they had wrote the 2 season premiere episodes for this season, and also, as I mentioned before, they also wrote a Royal Problem earlier this season as well. So what did everyone think about the writing and the story of this episode?
This is probably one of the, like you mentioned, one of those typical Romeo and Juliet kind of stories. The only real major difference is that they didn't wind up committing suicide by the end.
They died later, but just not in this story.
It's just the thing that I kind of really wanted to see is I kind of wanted to get the idea of the only real question that this episode leaves kind of unanswered is we know something happened to them, we just don't know what. And we did get to see at least a sort of a happy ending in terms of that, yeah, the 2 of them, or not so much of a happy ending, more of a bittersweet one, I suppose, because Bright Mac and Buttercup did get together. They did become a couple. And while Granny Smith did at least, get over her prejudice and, welcome them into, the family, Grandpere did effectively disown his own daughter. And while we do know that the 2 of them did go on to have 3 lovely children of their own, the problem is that they wound up in some sort of incident or something happened to them. And according to Earth Pony standards, they apparently died tragically young, because the 2 of them were always just referred to in the past tense. So... And even Apple Bloom even mentions that the tree that was planted in there was something to remember them by. So,
I'm gonna say this just at the beginning here to get it out of the way. I think if this episode would have covered their death, it would have ruined the episode. It wouldn't have helped. It's like I don't think their death is something that needs to be really covered in the show, because we've already sort of covered the topic of death before in Tanks for the Memories, and I don't really think that. And I don't really think it'll really expand to their characters. That may be interesting to know, but I don't think it would really work as an episode. But in this episode in particular, if they would have featured it, I think it would have hurt the episode. This episode was really focused on their life and how they lived, and celebrating that, and letting that affect the Apple family and the Pear family emotionally, and not focusing on they're not here anymore, or they're dead, or why they died. I think, not to mention the time it would take to cover that in the episode, but just the content, I don't think it would fit with the message of the rest of the episode either.
And like I was saying in the chat room, I mean, three of the Apple siblings grips with their death as it is anyway. They've already largely moved on and made peace with that fact anyway. So it's really just more of a thing of interest on my end. I'm more the thing is what more kind of how can I say this? Kind of like what Dark 92 Enigma just mentioned in the chat. What's more powerful is the fact that grandpa apparently didn't get to see a goodbye. He doesn't. Apparently he didn't know that his daughter passed away.
Well, I don't think they ever said that he did or didn't know, but I assume he knew because it didn't seem to be any sort of surprise to him.
Well, the unanswered question is: did he not know about his daughter after he moved back to Ponyville, or did he didn't know about it ahead of time and just stubbornly back out of some still?
He probably knew. I just he just.
I don't know. Anyway.
But yeah, I really did like how they sort of handled it. I think that pretty much like Mr. Ben mentioned, all the mentions of the Apple parents were in the past tense, and between that and how everybody they go to reacts when they ask about their parents, and the ending with the tree, and when I forget if it's Apple Bloom or Applejack, one of them says, "Hearing their story makes me feel." It was Apple Bloom. "Hearing their story makes me feel closer to them somehow." This episode really does everything but state outright that they're dead, and pretty much does everything else besides saying that. And really, I kind of prefer that way of handling it, especially in the context of this episode, rather than just being outright blunt about it. I feel that personally, for me, it carries more emotion in the episode than they just said, Applejack says, "My parents are dead," or something. I feel like the way they handled it was a lot more kind of subtle and crafting and emotional. But what I really liked about this is how they handled the episode. I mean, this is an episode where we finally get to know about AJ and the rest of the Apple's parents there, and they didn't make it about how they died or anything like that. They made it actually a pretty bittersweet, happy sort of episode in the end. It's just a wonderful story about how they met and got to know each other. Like I said, sort of a Romeo and Juliet style love story. And I think that's much more engaging about a kind of story to know how they lived, how they met, and less about how they died. And of course, we get the big plot twist that the Apple's mother was a pear and not an apple. So that was definitely interesting and kind of throws a whole twist on everything there.
One of the things that I've also one of the particular parents, largely Applejack's mother, was actually part of, and not the pears. So this coming from the show that no, she's actually a pear was a nice little twist, especially since there was some fan art that had been kind of existing for years beforehand of apparently the Apples kind of having a feud with the Pears or something like that. Apple family mafia and what have you.
I forget
that makes it into a bit of a dark turn.
I forget what episode it was last season, but there was an episode last season where Applejack was holding a pear. I forget which one
it was the season 6 finale.
It was the finale, okay. Yeah. Just a little bit of subtle foreshadowing there to this episode.
See, I think Everlasting Joy even sent a tweet to Big Jim Miller if that was an intentional thing. And all he got was just a winking face emoticon back in return.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty obvious plant there. Get it? Plant.
It's also kind of hilarious because, Q is already in the show's Discord. Now Captain Kirk has joined the ranks as well.
Yep.
Fortunately, not in the same episode. No, minor nitpick, but still.
I think this episode is probably some of the most direct romance we've really seen in the series as well. I mean, we've had some episodes that are focused on it, like Hearts and Hooves Day and the Big Mac episode earlier this season, but this one was very heavily kind of a romantic love story episode, including a straight up like kiss at the end when they are at the wedding, which is really something we haven't really gotten that much of in the show before. And of course, this is after we get that Big Mac episode earlier in the season as well.
I really wish we got to see more romance in the show. Straight up, just I mean, I know some people, younger children may find kind of romance kind of a little off-putting, but this is just something that we simply just don't have enough of in any medium. Especially for something like this.
I mean, I can understand why they don't. They kind of want this show to focus more on friendship than romance and love. But I think that was one of the great things about this episode is you can see the friendship they have as well. But this isn't just some sort of, sexual attraction romance or something like that. It's very much a bond that they form, like a friendship that kind of blossoms into something more, which is nice and fits a lot more within the show's narrative that it has. I mean, I guess you could say that, Derek. I guess the problem with that is we never really saw that romance. By the time we met Shining Armor and Cadence, they're already getting married, and we get some flashbacks to how they know each other and how they met each other, obviously through Cadence babysitting Twilight. But we never really had that look into them meeting and getting to know each other that we got in this episode.
Yeah, Shining in Armor and Cadence's romance was mainly just portrayed through supplemental material such as the comics. So you'd really have to kind of go a little bit out of your way to really know about that. And even then, the supplementary material is not exactly fully canon. I mean, they do kind of link in a little bit, but the show pretty much just trumps the comics pretty much in importance. Yeah. So if the show decides to come out with an episode, they may follow something like what the comics did, but not necessarily.
But we haven't really even gotten an episode that really focused on Shining and Cadence as a love story. I mean, even the season 2 finale was more focused on, the changelings and the wedding itself versus them being in love. So I wouldn't even count that as a love story. One of the things I really loved about the writing of this episode was the dialogue throughout. I think the dialogue was just so, and this is something that Joanne and Christine, I think, really excel at, because it's something I've mentioned a few times for their episodes this season, both in the dialogue in the season opener. We had, it was another kind of big episode. Like, we were all excited that Princess Celestia was getting some more spotlight in that episode as well, before we even knew a Royal Problem existed. But the dialogue in that episode and the dialogue in A Royal Problem were all really, really well done. But it really, really shines in this episode throughout, both the dialogue between between Pear Butter and Bright Mac, and also just the dialogue between the Apple kids and the ponies that they're talking to and getting the stories from, like Goldie Delicious and Mrs. Cake and the rest of them. I think the dialogue and the intros to all of those scenes are really done. Especially like Bert. I really like Burnt Oak's dialogue when they first kind of go to get him, and Mrs. Cake's as well, because they're kind of like, oh, I was wondering when you were going to maybe come and ask about them, and I like that initial dialogue exchange that they had at the beginning of those scenes. I think one of the most powerful things of dialogue was at the wedding scene when Grand Pear is confronting Pear Butter, pretty much, and pretty much giving her the choice of choosing between him and Bright Mac there. And I just really love the dialogue exchange there when she's like, where he's like, are you choosing to be an apple over being a pear? Then she's like, are you making me choose? It's just such that thing, and just seeing the look of shock on Grand Pear's face right after that. I mean, you can see how much he was kind of taken back by that really powerful dialogue there. And before the kind of the bitterness causes him to restand his ground. And then when he chooses to be an apple, you can see the hurt in Grand Pear's eyes and expression before rage kind of takes him over, and he stomps away. It's just really a really great character moment there, told through the dialogue and the animation.
What's even more heartbreaking is that this is not an uncommon thing in real life either.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's not. Yeah, it's definitely not something that's purely a dramatic thing. I mean, that's definitely something that does happen in real life as well, unfortunately. I really think that this episode was really nicely paced too. I like how they kind of split it up into like the apples sort of finding out the story through different people who knew their parents in different ways, like with Burnt Oak knowing their father more and Mrs. Cake knowing more of their mother, etc. And I guess they really paced the story well. It let each of those individual stories really have its time in the episode without feeling like we're kind of rushing through their story, their parents' story, and how they met. Right up to the kind of the climax of the wedding and to the end there. I really liked the structure of it there. It was nicely structured. I like how they introduced Grand Pear right at the beginning, and sort of we hear the story, and then they come back to him at the end and kind of confront him again after they've heard the entire story. I really liked how that worked.
I also like that we get a little bit of a minor, character background a bit in some of the background characters. While I understand this is the first time we've met Burnt Oak, it's nice to see that, hey, we do have a little bit of a family friend in, to the Apple family. Goldie Delicious getting a slightly expanded role, always nice to see. But then one of the biggest things that I love was, this kind of surprise that Mrs. Cake was their mom's best friend when they were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently she even went by a different name, Chiffon Swirl. And this is I apologize, I tend to do this, but getting a little off topic, I'm curious as to why Chiffon Swirl changed her name to Cupcake when she married Carrot Cake.
Well, last name change, obviously. But
well, yeah, surname change, obviously. But
so Swirl her maiden name, I guess. I don't know.
Just Chiffon Cake's kind of a perfectly serviceable name. I don't know.
Have we ever heard her first name before?
Yeah, Cupcake. But
when did we hear that?
Jeez.
I guess I don't ever remember hearing that at least in the show.
I'm pretty sure we heard it.
Unless it's just a fanon name.
Pretty sure we heard it at some point. And let me look that up. We can move on while I look that up real fast.
Yeah, it was great having another story that kind of takes place in the past there as well, so we get to see a lot of the characters when they were younger there. We'll get to more when we get into the character discussion. Yeah, and I don't want to say too much on this because a lot of this is going to be, I have stuff written for the character discussion, but yeah, Joe and Christine continue to just be absolutely fantastic at utilizing continuity and making sure everything's very continuous. In terms of the story, and we saw that a lot in their episodes this season already, and A Royal Problem, and we see it again here where the characters that are brought back make sense. Characters I never thought we would see again, but they make sense to appear, and just the overall continuity of the story and the storyboarding as well is really well done in the episode. I guess that's kind of one of the pluses of doing this episode so late in the game is a lot of this stuff is already kind of being laid out, so they can kind of connect the dots at the end rather than trying to predict, if they did this in like season 1 or 2, rather than trying to predict of where characters and stories are going to go 7 seasons down the line. So as long as they're good at following continuity and keeping up with continuity, it does help a lot to do this 7 seasons, and you can just kind of connect different dots that have already been laid out in the show, and make everything make sense.
Oh, let's see. I think they called her Cupcake in both the mobile game and the Elements of Harmony guidebooks.
Okay, so
Yeah.
nothing terribly official then. Okay.
Yeah.
I
No,
was going to say they
toy-
never really called it. I never recall them saying it in the show.
And some of the toys call her Miss Dazzle Cake.
Yeah, Mrs. Pink as well for some reason.
Yeah, names have never been terribly consistent through different books and especially the toy lines. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if like canon with the show, her name is still Chiffon Cake. Right now, it would make sense.
Like I said, it's not really that important.
Yeah, it's kind of a curiosity because I heard some other people mention that Cupcake, and I just never recalled that in the show before. And I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
No, you're probably right. I'm just probably
Being that we have like going on almost 200 episodes of the show at the end of this season, so yeah, it's a lot to remember.
Say thank goodness for the episode guide. I could just take a look, and if I had to, I will scrub through every one of these transcripts.
Exactly.
But anyway, as we're
I guess the main other final thing I had for the story here is just the whole final sequence and final scenes of the episode were just incredibly powerful. When the Apple Trio kind of confronts Grand Pear and brings him back to the farm there, and the dialogue exchange he has with Granny Smith. Again, just the very fantastic, powerful dialogue they have in this episode. And then going to kind of see that tree that their parents had planted at their wedding when they planted the seeds in the ground. Just really, just one of the few times I've like literally teared up in watching this show, because that whole ending sequence leading up to that kind of tree they have there was incredibly well done and really beautiful, both in terms of the story and the animation and design and the music as well in those scenes.
another just kind of something that I'm more curious about. Is it really possible for apples and pears to grow together on a tree kind of like that, or is that just the
See,
is that just
I've been trying to decide if they're actually growing together on the same tree there, because they're obviously two different trees that are kind of growing around each other. So it might just be they might technically be growing on two separate trees as normal, but everything's just so intertwined that it looks like it's one tree. That's what I thought, at least when I was initially watching it. Because looking at a closer look at what the images that Radio and DM12 linked in the chat there, it looks like the apples are growing on the darker green and the pears are growing on the lighter green.
Well, the only reason I asked is because it looks like, to me, it looks like even though they are kind of growing on separate trees, I guess I'm looking at that picture a little bit more, yeah. It looks kind of like there's a couple of apples that look to be growing on the pear side of the tree and a couple of pears looking to be growing on the apple side. So I'm like, I don't know if it's just two intertwined trees or if it's...
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, no, it's not possible, but
Yeah.
like IRL.
I didn't think so.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's just because all of the branches and tree and all the leaves and stuff are so intertwined in that. But you can still see the separation of the darker leaves and the lighter leaves from the two separate trees and tree bark there. So, but it's just, I mean, that's a really I really like the design of that with how those two trees are wrapped around together and how everything kind of comes together at the top, so you really can't tell that they're two separate things. And of course, how they kind of make that heart in the center as well is really, really great design that really plays into the power of that scene. Well, rather her bury the hatchet than bury Grandpear.
That's
I'm gonna
dark.
bury him 6 feet under.
Well, he
Help
is an older
fertilize
pony.
the tree.
Yeah. I mean, he is an older pony. He probably won't. He's probably not going to be no,
Yeah.
not too far from that happening anyway.
Is there anything left for on the story and the writing that anyone wants to discuss before we move on to the character development?
No, I think we're good on that one.
Yeah, I think I covered everything that, because there's a lot of stuff for characters that, that I'm not hitting on, but yeah, I think that was about all I had for story.
Yep. Okay. I apologize. I was just looking through the transcript. Yeah, baby cakes. Twilight Sparkle says cupcake and carrot cake must be so proud.
Oh, there we go.
So yeah.
Mystery solved. I guess she just changed her full name then. Unless it's just unless Cup is just a nickname. Because her first name would be Cup and her last name would be Cake. So maybe Cup is just a shortened version of Chiffon.
Maybe it's just Chiffon's still just her legal name. Just everyone just calls her Cupcake.
Yeah,
like how my name, like how my legal name is Benjamin, but everyone just calls me Ben.
Or like how in this episode, Bright Mac called her Buttercup and not Pear Butter. And
yeah, exactly.
And that's the name that everyone knew her by, or at least the kids only knew her as Buttercup.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. I just wanted to...
Thank you. I'm glad we've solved a better mystery than Scooby-Doo Moon Monster Madness. So I'll say that. Okay, so we can go on to the characters and the characterization of the episode. I think this is definitely the heart of the episode here, as very much character-centered episode, both on the Apple siblings, the apples and the pears, and of course Bright Mac and Pear Butter as well. I think they're just the cutest of characters. I just love both of their designs and personalities. I just really love both of those characters. It's something that, we've been waiting to see them for so long now, 7 seasons in. It's one of those things where you have to give Joanne and Christine a lot of credit for wanting to tackle these episodes, which might have been put off just because they're a lot to tackle. These are episodes that the entire fandom has been really kind of looking forward to for a long time now. Both this episode, the Royal Problem episode, and they really gave it their all and were brave enough to kind of take them on, and I think did a really good job of it. And so these are two characters that I've been waiting to see forever. We have never really even seen them in the show, not to mention heard of them. And so to kind of come in with high expectations and I think really deliver two really good characters and a good story between them was great. I guess the first thing I'd written down, I was just kind of going through watching the episode again, it was great to see Goldie Delicious return. That's a character that I never thought would return in the series ever. So it was great to have her come back, and it made perfect sense in the scope of the story here. I never thought we'd see her again, but it made perfect sense for her to be back in this story as they're trying to learn their family history from someone who isn't Granny Smith. And of course, that's already been set up in Pinky Apple Pie.
Yeah. Apparently Goldie's the chronicler of the Apple family history, at least the owner of that.
Yeah, I like how she pulls out the book about, has the history of their parents, and it's like volume number 138 or something like that.
I was about to say, yeah, that they have at least 138 volumes. Like, they've only been in, like, Ponyville for how long now? Maybe that's just expanding back to before they founded Ponyville.
Yeah. Well, we know that they were the ones that founded Ponyville, so
Yeah.
Ponyville's been there for more than 1,000 moons. What I really liked, and I think I saw someone mention this above, was it was nice to see them reference kind of where the Apple kids sort of got a lot of their characteristics from, both visually and sort of internally or morally from their parents, with Bright Mac being shown to be an honest pony, Pear helping Miss Cake to get her cutie mark. That was really cool, and it was nice to see them actually explicitly sort of state those and point those out in the episode. And then visually, Bright Mac having AJ's hairstyle and Apple Bloom's colors and Big Mac's body form, and Pear Butter having AJ's orange coat and Big Mac's orange hair, and also having white freckles like AJ. So it was kind of really, really nicely done, both in terms of character design, and also just how the characters acted and what their characterization was. So, and being able to see that go to their children. It was nice to see the cheetah as well again. Indian, I mean, that's definitely, like I mentioned before, that's a plus of being able to do an episode like this so late. Negative being there's a lot of hype going into it, but plus being you already have all these things set up, so you can easily make her mom have Apple Bloom's characteristics of helping others with cutie marks and stuff. Doing this episode earlier in the season before we really developed Apple Bloom to have those traits and characteristics would be obviously hard to do early on without a lot of meticulous planning going into it. So that's a good thing about having this episode 7 seasons in, is they're able to make the characters really tie in tightly with their children, since we already know their children. Another really kind of small but powerful moment for me was when Big Mac kind of came back to Burnt Oak really quick to sort of ask if they can stop by again to hear more stories about their father. I thought that was really nice. It wasn't necessary at all for the story, but I really think it just added a really good moment and added a little bit more kind of character to Big Mac, that he really wants to hear more about his father.
Yeah, it kind of gives you the feeling that Big Mac isn't entirely as over it as suggested.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't blame him. I mean, like was mentioned before, even though it wasn't really specifically stated outright, it was implied that Bright Mac and Pear Butter died tragically young for Earth Pony standards. So Big Mac must have still been very young when. Yeah,
because Apple Bloom would have had to probably just been born before whatever happened.
Yeah.
And it really plays into that narrative too, that they're dead without explicitly saying it, because obviously they don't know a ton about their parents or their history, so they're very interested to learn more about it because they were so young when apparently they died. If they were just away and had been away for a while, it wouldn't make any sense because, yeah, I mean, unless they were missing, but yeah, I don't think they would do that. That's kind of stupid in terms of story plot, but it makes sense that they haven't really had that contact with their parents as they've gotten older, because they don't know all of the stories.
It's really even more tragic for Apple. Think of it. That implies that Apple Bloom was too young to even remember her parents and never really knew them at all.
Well, she had a line earlier that, I felt like I found a part of me that I didn't even know was missing. And you can really read into that line that she really didn't know her parents, so she doesn't really know how much she was really missing there. Not to mention the line she has at the end where where she said, "Hearing their story makes me feel closer to them somehow." So
Yeah.
it's definitely kind of very kind of tragic on her part there. One of the things I forgot to write down, but I just kind of remembered as we were talking about Big Mac, and I'm hoping I'll never really say this again after this episode, but it was nice to have another episode where he just talked, and this is something we had talked about before in previous episodes, more specifically his focused episode earlier this season, where they're just kind of giving him dialogue more than yep and nope now, and it's not. They're not just making him say yep and nope. They're not making him talk more as a joke like they would in previous episodes. Like, oh, he doesn't talk. Now he's talking a lot. Now he's just having normal dialogue. It's not a ton of dialogue just to keep with his kind of his character and personality, but he is actually just having dialogue now, and it's not awkward that or weird that he's speaking anymore. And I think that's something, again, I'm really happy that they've kind of pulled back this season for him and just allowing him to kind of just talk and be himself and have that dialogue, because it really helps in episodes like this one where he's just able to do that and not have it be weird or funny that he's talking anymore.
Yeah, I've always thought that it's always nice. It's just, regardless of whether it helps him, get character growth, regardless, to drive the episode forward. Big Macintosh does need to talk a little bit more. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a strong silent type, but I mean,
yeah.
That having been said, I do kind of like that. I do kind of wish that the show would have been able to do something like what they were planning back in season 1, where if they had an episode doing revolved around entirely around Big Macintosh, that it would be completely dialogue free, that everything would be driven completely by music.
I guess they could still do that.
Yeah. Problem is that it'd be kind of hard to do that in a full 22-minute episode format. Something like that would probably be better done as a short, I think. But anywho.
I also just had written down here Pear Butter's laugh, because the laugh that Felicia Day does for her is so intoxicatingly good.
Agreed. No wonder how Big Mac or Bright Mac fell in love with her. Blech.
I mentioned this earlier, but now that we're in characters, I'll bring it back up. I really loved how they brought in so many characters to tell the story, and gave them a lot more backstory in the process. We had new characters, a few new characters come in, but then we had a lot of returning characters, both Goldie Delicious, but also Mrs. Cake again, Mayor, was brought back in. It was nice to see all these characters not only brought in to tell the story, but also kind of giving them more development and giving them more backstory. Now we know that Mrs. Cake was close friends with Applejack's mom, Pear Butter, and we know that Mayor has been mayor for a while apparently. She was still mayor then, and she's still mayor now, so she's obviously been mayor of Ponyville for a long time, and we know that she officiated their parents' wedding as well. So it's nice little tidbits of information and world and story building that we got in this episode by including those characters rather than just having them go to Goldie Delicious or Burnt Oak or a new character and just telling them the entire story.
To say, I do like some of the callbacks that they had as well, and the flashbacks, obviously the Mare and the Moon, but I also kind of like how they showed Mare back with her pink mane, so which was implied that she deliberately dies, so she's still apparently pink maned, even as an older woman.
I think that was one of my favorite bits of continuity because it's so subtle and it's. In both cases, I mean, it wasn't really a big part in that episode either. It was just kind of a one-time joke that Gabby Gum's saying that she dyes her hair gray now, I guess to perceive to be older and more astute to what she's doing, I guess. But it was nice to see her having pink hair here, in the past, and it was a nice little, not even mentioned, subtle reference to that. Again, going back to the great continuity this episode had. No, I don't have to. Not everyone who has pink hair is related to Pinky.
Speaking of Pinky, there was a bit of a, I don't remember where I seen, but according to the story writers, apparently, that Pinky was kind of sort of unofficially adopted by Cupcake and Carrot Cake because they couldn't seem to have foals of their own, and then their kids happened. So,
and they said, "Get the fuck out, Pinky." No, they didn't say that. One of the kind of interesting things I saw in the characters was between Granny Smith and Grand Pear. Of course, most of the story kind of focuses on them and the feud that the two families have for whatever reason. For it, both have this unreasonable urge to keep Bright and Pear apart because of that family feud, just like classic kind of Romeo and Juliet kind of stuff. But it's interesting because at the end, at the wedding scene, Granny's views seem to sort of change when Pear says, "But the apples are my family now too." She turns around with this kind of shocked look on her face, like she's kind of realized what she's doing wrong, and as soon as she hears the word family, and we all know how important family is to the apples, just based on past episodes and stories that we've seen involving them. So she kind of, right after that happens, she immediately lets Bright Mac go and run to Pear Butter and just kind of, again, continues to watch them with that same wide-eyed expression there. And then when Grand Pear finally disowns Pear Butter, Granny immediately kind of takes her in. And we obviously know, given what we know from being in a future point of view here, and this is a flashback, we know that Granny became supportive of her and approved of them being together, obviously, in the future, and whenever whatever happened to them, obviously helped raise their kids as well. It's a really subtle part of the episode there, told pretty much entirely through Granny's expressions, no dialogue or anything else, just really told through her expression there. But I think it was a really good and powerful moment, and you can kind of see that turnaround of Granny Smith and her realization of what she's doing there as soon as Pear Butter calls them family.
and like I said, the fact that it's just a little subtle thing, but the fact that you could see Granny Smith actually to like drape it over Pear Butter's back, pull her into a hug as Grandpa storms off, that just speaks volumes to like how she's gotten over that just within that short time, just within that short turnaround. So
yeah, and of course you can compare that to Grandpa, who obviously all these years later regrets it, but at the time wasn't obviously that family mentioned that just he wasn't having any of that there, and you can kind of see the difference between him and Granny there. He obviously doesn't share the same feeling about family, at least not until the future or present or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it was nice to see Grandpa have that, in his older years here, have, a sudden want to reconnect with his grandkids there and move back to Ponyville, but again being too, embarrassed and ashamed to really go and confront them himself and kind of just doing like we saw in the beginning of the episode where he would just kind of interact with them without them knowing, trying to spend some sort of time with them without having to come to terms with the horrible things that he feels he's done in the past there. And it kind of all plays into make those final scenes much more emotional when the Apple kids come and Apple Bloom confronts him directly about it, and they all kind of break down there. It really helps drive that emotional experience of that scene. A lot of times, DM12, a lot of times feuds and stuff like that are based on the stupidest things. And you just get so caught up in hating someone else or feuding with someone else that you forget the initial reason that you even started to feud. And it just becomes about being feud. And the show's pretty much already covered that once in the back in the end of season 5 there with the Hofields and Colts. I'm assuming, Mr. Ben, that he was having some very... I would assume that he was been having a lot of internal struggles since since obviously Pear Butter and Bright Mac died. Probably having a lot of years of kind of emotional struggle with that, and eventually just kind of gave into it and moved back at the very least to try and get some sort of relationship with his grandkids without actually letting them know anything else about it.
To say, yeah, it's just it's kind of interesting because, well, we've already mentioned this. It's kind of how Grandparent never really got to apologize for his behavior to his daughter and son-in-law, and how he kind of has to realize that how he has. It's really kind of. I hate to use the word tragic because we've used that so many times, but it really is a tragedy because he has that sort of shame, that sort of desire to say that he's sorry, and he's never going to get that chance.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I think we see a lot of that embodied in sort of the dialogue in that last scene where it's just like, I've missed so much, and it's just too, it's too late. And he was obviously very, very angry with himself about letting this grudge go for so long. And then of course you get, Apple Bloom coming in and said, well, we're together now, and we still have time to make those, to have that time together in the future, which was a really nice kind of sentiment there. Yep, and, he can kind of rekindle that relationship with his daughter there through his grandchildren. And that's why one of the reasons I just love this story so much. It's such a bittersweet story, both in every sense of the word, but both in terms of Pear Butter and Bright Mac's relationship, and now in the future with Grandpair and the Apple kids. There's so many parts of the story that are so sad, but at the same time so happy and joyous as well. It's just a really, really powerful story. I totally agree with you there, Mr. Ben. I think she would forgive him in a heartbeat. pretty much. Well, I mean, pretty much exactly how her kids did. I mean, I think that's something that they would have gotten from her is forgiving him so quickly and inviting them back into their lives so quickly. I think that's something that you can see through her children there.
Is it kind of bad? I can also see something just a little bit kindling between Grandparent and Granny Smith, even in their advanced age.
Wait, what?
I mean,
I missed the first part. But what between Grandparent and Granny Smith?
is it bad that I could see something kind of sparking between Grandparent and Granny Smith, even in their advanced age? I doubt something like that's beyond like any sort of a friendship.
I don't think so. I think there's still
Yeah.
enough differences that. But it was really funny to see, even as they're reunited there and sort of forgiving each other. They're still kind of sharing jabs back and forth, kind of playfully there, which I find really kind of touching.
Yeah, I can see them, at least sort of having at least a sort of a playful friendship, if nothing else. That's kind of like based off of a more of a rivalry. Just anything beyond that, though, no.
Is there anything about Pear Butter or Bright Mac that anyone wants to mention in terms of their characterization?
Have we already gone over them?
We've kind of been going all over the place for it. We've mainly been
Yeah.
talking about the other characters, though.
Yeah. I suppose in terms of the characterization, Brymax is just something that, like we mentioned, is a kind of like an amalgamation of all three of his kids. Um, he's large. He's very strong. He's obviously got Big Mac inherited his dad's strength, but he's also very honest as well. Wrecked like that one part where he wrecked the Pear's water tower. He actually had no shame, and he was significantly courageous in stepping forward and saying, "No, Mr. Pear, this was my fault. I did this."
Mm-hmm.
So.
And yeah, like Dart said, they really seem to have a lot of influence on a lot of characters that we already knew in the show there. And it was really kind of touching when they go to all these different characters, Mrs. Cake and stuff. They're all like, "Oh, I was wondering, when you would ask about this. I never really knew the right time to bring it up, but I'd love to talk to you about them." And how much, especially Mrs. Cake, just how much of an effect they had on their lives. There's Bright Mac also had the same hat as Applejack had as well. So AJ kind of gets that hat from him. I guess you can imply maybe that's why she has like a billion of them.
Yeah.
Everyone always wanted a tragic backstory for the hat, so I guess there you go. He wore the same kind of hat.
That's one of the questions that I'm glad we finally got answered. That's one of those another unanswered questions, is that a lot of people thought that Applejack got her hat from one of her parents, either her dad or her mom, and a lot of people was like, well, did she get it from her dad or did she get it from her mom? And so it finally came from her dad. So,
and it's not the same hat, because we know that she has a whole closet for a billion of them, and they've gotten lost and ripped and stuff. But it's more the sentiment of having that same style of sort of cowboy hat there. Yeah, well, right, more than just Bright Mac has the same exact hair and coat color as Apple Bloom. He's pretty much Apple Bloom's colors in Big Mac's body with Applejack's hair.
Applejack's hairstyle, yeah.
Excuse me, the hairstyle, yeah. And hat. Yep. So it's less the hat itself and more of the concept and style of the hat. But yeah, I'm pretty sure we can safely say, like, if it wasn't already sort of confirmed already in the show that their parents are dead. I mean, if they ever tried to bring them back in some way, like they were just lost or something, I think that would completely ruin everything about their characters and the Apple family, and the Apple kids' characters. So. But yeah, like I mentioned, at the beginning, I guess really liked both of their characters. They're very, very kind of cute and very, very likable, both in terms of their design and visually, and also in terms of their personality as well. Obviously, we're only with them for a brief moment. This isn't just some deep dive into exactly who they were and what all their faults are and etc. This was very much just kind of focused on how they met. And how they came to be in love and stuff, and I think that was handled really well in terms of their characterization. We can kind of see them at their best. Yep, that's another little hint there from that episode, Ready Drug. Yeah, when if mom and dad were here, they'd be so proud of you.
Yeah.
I think her mom. It makes that kind of even more kind of an emotional statement in hindsight after this episode as well. Now that we knew that her mom had a similar knack of helping people with their cutie marks and stuff, I think that brings that statement to a whole other level about how proud she would have kind of been of Apple Bloom there. Hey, keep in mind, Applejack is also super strong, so.
Earth Pony strength seems to be kind of a ubiquitous thing, not really limited to any one specific character. Mm-hmm. Remember how Mod Pie managed to take that huge boulder and it flying over the horizon?
Yeah. Yeah, not wanting a big celebration or anything. Wanted to keep it low key.
Yeah.
It was nice how it was really nice writing wise to how they put all those little tidbits in. Again, it's not something that needed to happen for the story, but it's something that just makes the story so much better and provides a different additional kind of character for not only their parents but also the children as well. So, anything else for characters or characterization that anyone else has that they want to talk about that we missed? See if anyone in chat has anything. So we've gone through all the main points that I have. I'm sure we could kind of BS our way through another hour of talking about characters, but that was all the main points I wanted to make there. Characterization overall, it was just fantastic. Again, just one of the highlights of the episode there. So yeah, another kind of big one here that we normally isn't that big, but I think it's a little bit more to talk about today, and that's the voice acting. Of course, this is seem to have one of these a season now, as they find different actors who like Pony and kind of get them on. We have not one but two guest voices in this episode for this season. Both William Shatner and Felicia Day. I know the William Shatner has definitely been a long time coming, and I think it's pretty crazy that they gave both him and Felicia such important characters to the main characters, with one obviously being their grandfather on the other side, and Felicia Day being their mother as well. It kind of works, since we're probably never going to see her mother talking again. So for a guest voice, it works. But to give them those kind of very important characters to the show was something that I wasn't expecting when they announced that William Shatner was going to and Felicia Day were to be doing guest voices this season. I just thought it would be something like we normally have with some character of the day sort of thing that they've had in past seasons. But yeah, I was not expecting that, but I think they both did such a fantastic job characterizing those characters.
Yeah, and Shatner's, as you're kind of going in, you kind of expect to have Shatner sound like he normally does, like the kind of robotic Captain Kirk thing, but here he really put in a really great performance.
I know. I think that was the biggest surprise. I mean, when I heard Shatner was doing a guest voice, I was expecting Shatner to be playing Shatner in an episode on some character where he would be acting very much like he normally acts. But both credit to him and credit to the voice direction from Terry Klassen on the series here. He was absolutely fantastic in that role there, where you wouldn't even know it was him. I mean, he fit that role so well and was very emotional and acted it really, really well. Especially when we get to those final emotional scenes at the end there, where they're kind of reuniting with the grand pair. He did such a great job with that kind of very weak old voice, but still putting a lot of emotion behind it. It was something that surprised me. It was not something. I mean, I'm not saying Shatner's a bad actor or anything, but it's not what I was expecting him to do, to the kind of character and the kind of voice acting I expected of him when I heard he was going to be doing a guest voice on the show. It was a very pleasant surprise, and I think he just did such a fantastic job of it. And I think that's something, and we say this with every guest voice episode that we talk about here, but it's going all the way back to all the way back to season 4 with Weird Al coming on. They really do a really good job of handling kind of, I think, guest voices on their show. It's not like a lot of other shows, Simpsons or whatnot, where they'll have a guest voice and they're either playing themselves or they make a huge deal about the guest voice and put it into some character that's not really important or etc. With this show, the only reason we have guest voices is because when actors really expressed interest in the show and say they really like the show and enjoy the show, and then they kind of reach out to them and say, hey, well, do you want to do like the show? Do you want to do a voice on it? So it's kind of like not just bringing and paying in some celebrity to come in and just voice an actor on your show just so you can press the hell out of it and hopefully get more viewers. I mean, they do it just because some of these people actually do enjoy watching the show, and it would be a cool experience to come and voice a character on it. And I think that's one of the things that makes the show so great, is because all the voice actors and the people, creators and people who work behind the scenes on it really do care so much about it, and to bring in guest voices who also have some sort of caring about the show or interest in the show, I think it really helps it a lot as well. And again, putting them into roles that isn't just them necessarily playing themselves or stuff. I mean, with Weird Al, it was kind of him playing himself, but it wasn't really himself. They made it fit within the context of the story and of Cheese Sandwich's story, and tie that in with Pinkie Pie as well very well. When you get characters like Lena Hall or who was last season? It was John Patton Oswalt. What was last season? Again, they're playing characters that they just aren't necessarily playing themselves. They're playing a character in the show. Again, not trying to flaunt having a celebrity guest voice or something. They could have easily had William Shatner on the show here and had him in an episode with John DeLance and just make a ton of Star Trek references or something like that. They could have easily done that. It probably would have been fun. But they didn't do that. They brought William Shatner on and made him be part of this really emotional, deep, very important episode to the show. And it's something that I just really like about how they handle those guest voices on the show, because they do stuff like that. They bring Felicia Day in and have her play a very, very important character of the show and give her just an absolutely gorgeous song to sing. And it's just great. I mean, not many other shows do that with celebrity guest voice actors on them. Oh, I absolutely loved young Grandpere in those flashbacks when he was kind of taunting Granny Smith. William Shatner, I mean, he did a fantastic job with the somber, sad, emotional Grandpere at the end. But just on the opposite end of the spectrum, that sassy sort of dick version of Grandpere from the past, he played that so well. I just loved the tone of his voice when he's taunting Granny Smith in those scenes. He plays that so perfectly, and again, it's not just like Shatner playing Shatner. He's playing it that character so well, and he did such a great work with that. Of course, Tabitha playing young Granny Smith also did a fantastic job with aging down her voice again there, and giving her some great dialogue and banter back and forth with Grandpere as well.
See, I really liked how Shatner really did both the young and old one, especially when Grandpare's condition being quite a shock, considering how he portrayed him as the proud, arrogant pony that he used to be. Because as the old Grandpere, he mumbles most of his dialogue, barely speaks a few words to a sentence, and struggles whenever he has to communicate complex emotions. And it's kind of interesting because all of that can be signs of conditions such as Parkinson's, and he might not just believe that he truly has got much time left, which is a reason why he may have chosen to fix regrets in his past. He can also barely keep from breaking down as he expresses how his anger blinded him for so long, which very much gives him the impression of a broken pony who truly wishes he may have been able to tell his daughter that he loved her one last time.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, I feel like this has been weighing on him for a long time now, and you can really hear that through his performance.
This is also kind of interesting, but this can also be seen as a reflection of what the original series of Star Trek, because Shatner was known to have fallen out of favor with most of them for numerous reasons. Although Shatner has made efforts at making amends with them with varying but mostly good degrees of success. Because here he plays a bigoted parent who alienated himself from his own daughter and missed every opportunity to patch things up before she tragically passed away. So, it's not difficult to see Grandpere as a tragic but ultimately redeemed figure, but also as a means for Shatner to express his real-life regrets here. Mm-hmm. I could probably just be going off on a tangent again.
And of course, the other guest voice that we had with Felicia Day coming on and just delivering just an absolutely fantastic and emotional performance as Pear Butter with with that kind of country accent and stuff. And I already mentioned that laugh that she did as Pear Butter. It was just so ridiculously adorable. Coming on and singing a full, beautiful song as well, and having these big emotional scenes, like during the wedding there, when she's asking her father there is like, are you making me choose and stuff. That line was delivered so well there. And of course all the dialogue and kind of the playful, loving banter that her and Bright Mac have are also very well performed. And did just a fantastic job with that. It was just it just felt like the perfect voice for that character and how she looked, and it just matched the character so well. And again, just like if you didn't weren't paying attention to the credits or some of the press beforehand, you probably wouldn't even might have not even known it was her. Again, they're just here and they're playing characters. They're not playing flaunted celebrity, animated celebrities or anything like that. And I think it's one of the cool things that I really liked about the guest voice. All the guest voices in the show, all of them are just so excited to have done that. I mean, you see them online and on Twitter and stuff during before and after the episode. With Weird Al, Patton Oswalt, Lena Hall, and now William Shatner, Felicia Day. They're all very proud of it. And they all seem to have a very good experience with it and really enjoyed it. And that's another kind of great thing to see that you don't see in a lot of other shows that kind of just pay celebrities to come on and do a guest voice. Yeah, Burnt Oak's voice actor I loved that. I mean, they really really made him sound like dead on to Sam Elliott.
To say, yeah, Burnt Oak was really good. I almost thought that was like Sam Elliott there for a second, and I thought, no, we would have heard that if, because we heard Felicia Day and William Shatner, but we would have heard if there was like a third big voice actor on that. So.
But yeah, that was Bill Mundy that voiced Burnt Oak there, and he just did a very, very fantastic job in doing that voice as well. I mean, regardless of the similarities to Sam Elliott there, right? The voice itself was just really, really good and fit his character really well. Of course, I have to mention, on the other side of this, we talked about Pear Butter a lot, but Bright Mac was voiced by Bill Newton. And he hasn't really done a lot. He's done some video game voice acting for additional voices in Shadow Sun and Dragon Age Inquisition, and did a voice in an episode in Beyblade Burst this year as well, which is probably how he got to audition for this role, being that Beyblade Burst is another Hasbro show. So I'm assuming that's sort of how he got into doing this pony episode here. But for someone who doesn't seem to have a lot of previous experience in voice acting, he really just did a fantastic job voicing Bright Mac in this episode. Through the kind of playful nature that Bright Mac has to the more serious scenes as well. He just was Bright Mac. It seemed perfectly like a natural voice for him, and he did all the big emotional and kind of playful scenes very well. It's funny hearing all these new voices on this episode as well. It's Discord and Harmony had a very short voice cast list. This one had a much longer one. Of course, we also had Peter New not only playing Big Mac, but reprising his role as Gordy Delicious, And he did a really great job as it. I mean, it's kind of like, sort of a joke in her last appearance here, but I mean, he really voiced her just as a character in this one, and had a lot of more kind of emotional parts to it, especially when they ask about their parents and stuff. And he just did a really great job of voicing her as well. And of course, Tabitha Germain, of course, performed a lot of duties here, both, like I mentioned before, great job voicing Granny Smith, especially the younger version of Granny Smith, but also voicing Mrs. Cake as well in the episode, and her younger version as well in her flashbacks. So she did a great job with that. And I mean, of course, the core cast of the episode as well: Ashley Ball, Michelle Kraber, and Peter New as Big Mac did a great job going through all of those very emotional scenes for him as they're asking about their parents and stuff. Obviously, kind of an emotional subject for them, and they all did just a fantastic job being led through the episode as well. Yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot more new voices come onto the show, and more recent seasons compared to early seasons where they, might reuse the same voice actors over again. And there's definitely a lot more instances of seeing voices that are brand new to the show come on to voice incidental characters, where in the past maybe those incidental characters would have just been picked up by one of the main voice casts. So, moving on a bit, this was a very emotional, obviously story character heavy episode, but it still did have some humorous moments in it, so we can go ahead and we can talk about those. What did everyone think about the humor in the episode?
Well, we had quite a bit of it, surprisingly. Like we mentioned, the Apple family history apparently so extensive, Gold Delicious had 138 volumes to cover everything. To say Bright Mac and Pear Butter as foals declare that each had been told not to talk to each other, and then without skipping a beat proceed to do just that. With adult voices even as young foals. Let's see.
Give me 1 second. Let me just restart the stream really quick. It's not having any issues on my end, but it's having some issues on YouTube's end, so give me 1 second. Because we're not actually streaming right now.
No.
See if it changes. It's weird. It says no data. We're not receiving data from your coder, but then it says the stream health is good. So I don't know what's
weird.
Hopefully you can all hear us, even if it's a little bit delayed, because I don't see any problems on my end, so I don't know what's wrong with YouTube here. Let's see.
Technical difficulties, please stand by. Okay, apparently they can hear us, so...
That's all I care about. I don't care what YouTube's telling me.
Alright,
okay.
well, hey, that's good.
So yeah, back to the humor. Jay, if you want to go ahead and mention what you had mentioned there when...
As J.E. Smith was saying?
As I was saying, like, all the cats stuff with Goldie Delicious, like, her bouncing out of or making her entrance, like, busting out of that giant pile of junk that falls out of the house, and that giant ball of cats, and then a cat climbs out of her and that she thought it was part of her hair.
The Katamari Damacy there.
Oh,
Na. Oh god, I don't need that in my head. I already had the tea packets yesterday.
and also
I need to stream that at some point.
And also how at the beginning of the episode, when Applejack and Big Mac bury the jar of pear jam. I was about to say Pearl Jam, a pear jam, and the
Pearl Jam.
Wrong jam.
bury the pear jam. Great. And they have that giant piece of the floor sticking up with all the dirt they buried,
Yeah.
and Granny Smith just passes by and doesn't even notice.
That was great.
Yeah. Love the little parts where like Bright Mac and Pear Butter are going into love-struck looks, and their respective best friends just trying to wave their hooves in their face and trying to snap them out of it.
Yep. Also, Applejack's initial reaction when Apple Bloom brings home the pear butter, like, pears in my house, get the fuck out. It's more or less there. I think that was kind of a pretty funny part.
I kind of like that little whiplash when like Apple Bloom was like, well, why do we even have a feud with the pears to begin with? And Applejack's like, why? What? I don't actually know why, to be honest.
Oh, I'm going back to Go to Delicious's after she makes that hilarious entrance in that ball of cats. She starts talking there, and after a few seconds, another cat just kind of appears in her hair and walks out because it matched her hair color.
Yeah.
That was fun.
I also kind of like this is really more just playful teasing on Bright Mac's part, but it's still kind of funny. When Pear Butter was preempted by that, she got Bright Mac something and pulls out a guitar, and Mac snatches it away from her like, hey, you got me a guitar, cool. I don't know how to play it.
Someone had posted this in an image earlier when we were talking about Burnt Oak, but I'll mention here as well, the Burnt Oak's obviously being a reference to Jeff Bridges, who plays the dude in The Big Lebowski. And in that scene, just before the Apple family goes, Apple kids go there to talk about him, we see him selling rugs to the My Little Pony dude pony. Big Kid who has a big cart of rugs, which is a very subtle blink and you miss it kind of joke reference there, which I liked. Of course, there's also Bright Mac's face when he's getting distracted by Pear Butter, and when he's in that race with Burnt Oak in the flashback.
So I also kind of like how Bright Mac was going a little bit, rambling about how he thought his love proposal would go if it wasn't for the fact that Pear Butter accidentally let it slip during her little song. And then finally, at their suit wedding, Granny Smith and Grandpa crash at the last minute. And, like, hey, we'll be married as soon as Mary says, oh, I now pronounce you husband and wife.
Yeah, I like that little save by Mary there.
You're too late for the injections.
Yep. Also in the flashback, and Mrs. Cake's flashback, when they're out there having the picnic and about to kiss, and Miss Cake comes in and starts talking. It's like, yeah, but I can see that you're busy. And kind of gives them this like really like funny look. It's about as implied as you'll see on this show.
It's kind of like reminding me about that few episodes ago back with Big Macintosh was going for Sugar Bell.
So I guess all this the DM12's like swiggity swooty coming for that booty line.
Yeah.
do continue, Mr. Ben.
But yeah, it kind of reminds me, speaking of what you were just saying, about how that situation where Big Macintosh was like swooning over Sugar Bell. Sugar Bell basically is just kind of draping herself over the various the countertop, basically like having her back end pointed, pointedly towards Big Macintosh.
Oh my!
It's kind of like you mentioned, is like that in issue here in this episode, with Mrs. K kind of walking in on two of them, Pear Mac and fuck it, Pear Mac. I'm gonna
Pear
just say
Mac.
that as
That's
my
a couple
portmanteau
name. Yeah, couple name.
Yeah, just walking in on the two of them, and saying, "Oh yeah, I see that you're about to be you're busy." So yeah, the implications on that. Yeah.
Gotcha. Now I'm just I'm just imagining what's his name Pear grandparent's syndrome, because and you got busy. Anything else for humor? Anyone else has? That's about all I had written down.
Yeah, it's not. I don't really have anything else on that.
Okay, in terms of the animation and the visuals, there's a lot of fun facial expressions and stuff. We mentioned this earlier, but I'll mention here again. I really liked the visual continuity with Nightmare Moon's image featured on the moon again here, especially with how prominently the moon was featured in a couple of scenes. It was kind of a nice way to make you realize exactly what time this takes place in.
To say, I really like the imagery when Bright Macintosh was like carving his and Buttercup's initials in the rock. And it makes sense that he would actually do it in rock, since sons and daughters of various farmers, tree farmers specifically. So they really wouldn't take kindly to someone like carving their names in a tree or anything of that nature.
Probably not.
But speaking of the trees, I really like the animation, right there when the Apple siblings bring Grandpa and Granny Smith to that one area with the tree, and we see the tree like right there, just kind of intertwined with each other, growing around each other, making that heart shape. That's just wow.
Yeah. That was really, really beautiful scene. I really like the animation when Big Mac bursts that little water tower that they had there. When the animation when that flood of water hits the young pear butter there, it was really well done. I only had to go back and watch that a few times just because it was really some really good animation on that for Flash. Also, pear butter with the flowers in her hair in that one scene, the picnic scene, was just freaking adorable.
Kind of liked how, like, when the Bright Mac and Tug were racing each other in the fields, how like the dust was like coming up off of their plows and everything like that nature. That was pretty well animated as well.
Yeah, that whole scene with all the fast animation, because all the backgrounds and stuff are all have like motion blur on them and stuff, and it really gives you the feel of how fast they're moving. That was definitely another really well animated one. Also, Pear Butter's face when she's telling me Miss Cake that we just happened. I think this record might hold this episode might hold the record for most blushing in an episode of MLP, because there's a lot between them there. Also, there's one point, I forget what scene it is. I think it was when they were around the scene with the song. Yeah, it was right before the song when Bright Mac says is like teasing her that she didn't get him anything or something like that. He has this very Rainbow Dash like smirk, that Dash face from Daring Don't. He has a smirk that looks a lot like that. It's pretty fun. This up. Yeah, the lighting there was also really good. I agree there. Anything else for animation or visuals or the humor that anyone wants to point out before we move on? Okay, so again, not many this season because of the movie, but this episode does feature a song, and boy, it's a great song. This features a song sung by Pear Butter from Felicia Day. A very, very simple song. I mean, even for songs in this show, this one is about as simple as you can get here, with just simply, Felicia Day's just really beautiful singing, backed with just very simple one acoustic guitar backing for it. I mean, I really enjoy, as you might know, all the music in the show and all the songs, but every once in a while, Daniel Ingram just kind of blows all the other ones out of the water, like with the Magic Inside song back at the end of season 5, for instance, and the songs from Heart's Warming Tale last season. But this one here is certainly one of those songs. It's, like I said, deceptively simple in its instrumentation, with it just being an acoustic guitar. But it backs itself with so much meaning and emotion and just the beautiful vocals that it more than makes up for that. If they contain more, if they kind of back this with more of an orchestra or something, I think it would have kind of lost its heartfelt core. And we've had plenty of country tunes now on the show. 7 seasons in here. But oops, lost my page here. 7 seasons into the show, we've had quite a bit, but none quite as emotional and like slow paced as this one was here. Most of the other ones are usually more kind of like a hoedown sort of more upbeat, positive country song in it. So yeah, go ahead and I'll play the instrumental of this. Let me get this switched over. I might have to. Hopefully won't have to restart Discord again. Let's see. Yeah, this is just a beautiful, beautiful song. Yeah, I'm gonna have to restart Discord. Oh, it keeps doing this. Okay, hopefully this will work now. Yeah, just a beautiful song. I don't really know how much else to say about that, but it's just a wonderful song.
Yeah, I'm not even really much one for. I have to.
I don't know. You think you got cut off there, Mr. Ben?
I said I'm not one for country music, but this still are really good.
Yeah. So, really one, yeah. So, yeah. Now we'll move on to the backing score, because, in addition to this song there, this episode just had some really beautiful score from William Anderson as well, all throughout the episode. So we'll kind of just kind of get to this here. Of course, we have a lot of returning score, like for the Apple family that we hear in a lot of episodes. We get to Goldie Delicious when she comes in, and when she after she makes her grand Katamari Bowl entrance there, she brings her bouncy leitmotif that she had in her previous appearance back in season 4's Picky Apple Pie. But without the main melody, so it doesn't have the main melody on it, but it has the melody's backing in the score here. Makes another reappearance. So I'll play a little bit of this next one. This is when we go into her story here, into Goldie Delicious's flashback. We start with some banjo and woodwinds that take us into the flashback, and when we arrive at the market in the flashback, Granny Smith and Grand Pale are selling their apple and pear products there, and they are accompanied by some ragtime piano here. And that score kind of continues to follow them as it goes on between their feud, and has a little nighttime score in there when they're tucking in their trees to bed there. As Goldie Delicious's flashback continues here, we're then introduced to the Philly Bright Mac and Pear Butter. This track features a very short and simple version of their leitmotif, which we'll hear more of in the next track. But you'll hear a little bit of it here starting to be introduced when they're children. This leitmotif follows them through the entire rest of the episode. This is very kind of bouncy, arpeggio-like motif. It's less the actual leitmotif and more the motif in the actual note motif in there that's played in this part. The dun 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 dun. From there, we actually go a little bit more into the future and Goldie Delicious's tale, and see them a little more. No, excuse me. No, this is when we go back. I believe this is when we go back to Goldie Delicious, and she's talking to them about it. This is when she concludes her portion of the story here. This is when we hear the first kind of full version of Bright Mac and Pear Butter's leitmotif, which which I've called Lighter Than Air. And this was, again, introduced in that previous track, but here we hear the full version of it. It features some arpeggios on piano, backed by some additional emotional string chords. So we hear that in the beginning of here before we go back to Goldie Delicious's theme afterwards. And again, this is going to be reprised for the couple throughout the rest of the score for the episode. And so that's Pear Butter and Bright Mac's theme there, love theme or just their character theme, leitmotif there. So it's has a piano and acoustic guitar front to it to match the song, and backed by some strings, and it has those little counter melodies of woodwinds throughout as well. I really love it. It's probably one of my favorite themes from the show now. It fits them very well and fits their characters really well. And it's taken through a lot of emotional parts through the score here. So we move on from there, and we get to Burnt Oak's Tale, with the Apple kids heading to Burnt Oak and getting him to tell them about their father there. It starts out with some really emotional strings and woodwinds that when they first ask about that, and Burnt Oak kind of has that little, subdued sort of, I was wondering when you'd come and ask me about that. So we have this very emotional string and woodwind part there to lead us into the flashback. And right before the flashback happens in this emotional string and woodwind part, you might notice one of the classic Friendship is Magic motifs from season 1 worked into the melody. It's the same the same melody progression there worked into this one very briefly, and that happens 2 times in this episode. I'll point it out there. After we enter the flashback, the score picks up to match the race, and as he concludes his story and we go back to the present, we once again hear Pear and Bright's beautiful leitmotif that was in the last track there, again with its full instrumentation. And so right here is the chord progression you might recognize as from season 1. This is a very, very classic version of one of the Friendship is Magic motifs. Right here. Very stern theme here for Grand Pear. Here's their theme again. It's very emotional pieces, and I just really love that motif that we have for the couple there. Next, we get to Miss Cake here, and she's introduced with a very short and energetic motif for herself there, as the apples come in, and then returns to the Apple family kind of banjo score as they start talking about their parents. Miss Cake theme then returns when she then resumes talking. Then. A little bit kind of like that same kind of cutie mark get score that we've heard in past episodes when she starts talking about how Pear Butter helped her get her cutie mark. From there, we then enter Mrs. Cake's flashback as she tells the Apple Trio about their mother. As it starts, we're greeting with a beautiful acoustic guitar and woodwind theme for the beginning of the flashback there. Then as Miss Cake starts talking to Pear Butter in the flashback, young Miss Cake that is, her and Bright Mac's leitmotif returns once again with a simple guitar instrumentation this time. Notice this is just the piano and guitar here. There's no woodwinds. This is the full version here, so it has this additional part at the end. From there, we'll get to the scene where Grandpère is telling Pear Butter that they're going to be moving away, so this is obviously backed by a very emotional score here for this scene. From there, we get to the wedding scene where Britt Mac kind of brings Pear Butter to a surprise small wedding. The wedding scene itself starts out being accompanied by some just stunningly beautiful score here with some lovely piano and acoustic guitar arpeggios, backed by a string ensemble. It's really, it's hard to describe. I guess it's just really really magical sounding score for this, and fits it very well. I really love it. Probably my second favorite one of this episode. About halfway into this track, we hear again that old "Friendship is Magic" motif that we heard earlier in the episode. The score continues to build to an emotional climax as they're about to get married before being cut off by Granny Smith and Grandpère coming in. And yeah, this track gets cut off at the end very quickly by them. And there's that little "Friendship is Magic" motif there. and that gets cut off by Grand Pear there. The episode then reaches its emotional climax as Pear Butter is forced to choose between her family and her love. So this is a very emotional, kind of heart-wrenching part of the score here as well. What I really love about this part is when Grand Pear actually turns his back and runs away after his daughter chooses to stay with the apples. Has this really wonderful bass clarinet that comes into play there. It really just fits the mood of him turning around and kind of running from his daughter there very well. Here's the clarinet. And then that brings me to my favorite track, and the final track of the episode proper here. It's in the past in the apple pear tree. And it's tracks like this one and the leitmotif for Pear Butter and Bright Mac, and the previous Pear Apple Wedding track that I also do. That really just, these are the reasons I love the score of this show. It's because it can be very emotional and very, very well done. The show really has no right to have this good of a soundtrack, both in the songs and the score of it, but it does. And William Anderson, Kelly Davidson, and the rest of the people involved with scoring these episodes and the Equestria Girls movies just do a fantastic job of putting these big tracks in there to really up the emotion of the score. So this track begins with the apples confronting Grand Pear back at the market there. And it kind of begins with two returning leitmotifs for the apples there. The second of these is the apples departing theme, which you should recognize from a few of the Apple Family episodes. It first appeared back in at the end of season 3's Apple Family reunion, as the Apple Family was leaving. So it's kind of a fitting track to be put here for this little small reunion with their grandfather. Next, the track transitions back as the Apple kids bring Grand Pear back to the farm to make up with Granny Smith and apologize. We bring back Bright Mac and Pear Butter's leitmotif one more time. Again, I really love this theme, and I really love its melody. It's both bubbly and emotional at the same times, and I just really love the mix of the acoustic guitars and strings and woodwinds here. The version that's used here again is the full version that we heard earlier. So yeah, that's the second part of the track that's used. Then we have the final track of here, when the whole group goes to visit the tree at the end, the pear apple tree at the end. We do something that we actually don't do a lot in the show, outside of the musical episodes, and that is actually use the song's melody in the episode's score. There's very few times where you'll actually hear the song's melody used in the score for the episode. Sometimes you'll hear like an instrumental reprise of the song, like in Winter Wrap Up, but that's just them playing the instrumental of the song later in the episode again. There's a couple times where this has happened before, and at the end of Pinky Apple Pie, back in season 4, William Anderson ended with a little stinger, the apples to the core, dun 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 dun, at the very end of the episode, there to kind of take the episode out. That's probably the most notable time I can think of off the top of my head. Obviously, in the episodes that are musicals, since those are all scored and have the songs done by Danny Ingram and his team, they weave the songs in a lot more to those episodes, but usually for the episodes that William Anderson scores, the songs and stuff are kept separate from the score, which is why this is so extra emotional here. When we see this apple tree here, they don't just start playing the instrumental of the song or just have some other score. William Anderson kind of orchestrates the song's melody into the score here to just really accentuate the emotional power of the scene. In addition to the acoustic guitar from the original song, because we know the original song was just acoustic guitar, Anderson also transfers the vocal melody over to a xylophone and then adds some additional backing strings to help increase the emotion of the scene. I really think it's just made the ending really something special to call back to that song in such kind of a more subtle way. And yeah, it's just really beautiful. So I'll go ahead and I'll play this full track now, starting again with that confrontation at the market. So here's Apples departing here. Now we're going to go back to the farm, and here comes the couple's theme here. Now we'll have a little bit of an interlude here, and then we'll get to that instrumental score reprise of "You're in my head like a happy song, like a catchy song." Here we go. Just really drives the emotion of that scene home to end on that, and just not many dialogue, just showing the tree, and you have that reorchestration of the song playing in the background. Really just makes that scene very, very, very emotional, and really makes you want to tear up during it. And that concludes the episode there. But we actually do have one more, because this episode is the first one this season that actually has some different credits music in it as well. Something that we did a couple last season, the season before, we kind of got a little bit more of, and then they kind of stopped doing it, and we haven't really had any at all this season yet. But they break that trend there and put in the instrumental of the song in on the credits here, which is I think just a fantastic choice, because I think going back into the My Little Ponies theme song after that very emotional scene would be way too jarring and wouldn't be appropriate at all. And so I'm really happy that they made the decision to go ahead and forgo that and just stick the song's simple acoustic instrumental in for the end there, because after that big emotional score there and that big emotional ending, just having the episode end with the very simple acoustic guitar there and during the credits is just the perfect way to end the episode here. And that's how the episode ends. So just a very beautiful episode emotionally for it. I mean, the score in this series is always so great, and the songs are always so great. But it's episodes like this one that really remind me kind of why I'm so into the music of this show, and just how much effort and talent kind of goes into making these and conscious decisions in terms of using and setting up and using leitmotifs and when to reprise them and reprising the song at the end there. Again, just some great work from William Anderson and Kelly Davidson and Daniel Ingram on all of the music for the episode here. No, it was a lot. Usually, every once in a while we get an episode that has a lot more music, and I'm probably not gonna have a musical episode this season. So it was nice to have this very music centered and very emotional episode in the middle of the season here. From that, we can go ahead. We'll continue on from the music though, and we'll talk about the episode's theme and moral. What did everyone think about that?
There really wasn't an actual. I guess probably just was any sort of standard. Don't be a dick kind of playing here. Brand pair. But in terms of theme, I guess the overall theme would probably just be family in this particular one. Just learning how to, go past differences and, stuff like that.
It's kind of like a cautionary tale in terms of don't let stupid grudges and stupid things like that kind of get in your way of spending time with those who you love and your family and stuff, because you don't know when they might be gone, and then in the future you might regret it and really want to rekindle that and not be able to. So it's very much kind of a cautionary tale about all of that and about forgiveness as well. And it's just a very classic and very emotional love story between two star-crossed lovers. So, any favorite part? What were everyone's favorite parts of the episode?
Favorite parts was basically just the whole song between Pear Butter and Bright Mac. Just the two of them just falling in love with each other.
Yeah. It's like I don't even know if I can say a favorite part of me. I guess the whole package was just amazingly well done and executed. I mean, obviously, I'm partial to the music and the song and the score, and I think those are just some of the best of the series in this. And if I had to pick, I'd probably say that. But the writing, the character development, just finally tackling this subject after so many years of waiting, and so much credit to Joanna Christine for doing that and for doing it so well. They definitely have taken the reins over from Josh Haber and Megan McCarthy and just really been pushing the show forward and delivering some episodes that I know we've been waiting for a while. I think that the show is in really good hands with them right now, and hopefully they continue into season 8 because they've been doing really, really well. And it's just so hard for me to say anything favorite. This is just such a perfect episode, and yeah.
In fact, if I was looking this up. This episode thus far is actually the highest rated of any episode on IMDb as of right now.
Oh wow! Really? Wow.
Yeah, like a 9.6 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean they've definitely, between this and the Royal Problem episode, they've definitely shown themselves to be some of the best writers the show has had. Especially when it comes to these very emotional character-driven episodes. I mean, their first episode on the show was the first episode regarding the tree in season 5 there in Castle Sweet Castle. So they kind of took that as the first episode, and they did a great job on that one as well. Again, that was another very emotional kind of character focused episode. Yeah, definitely well deserved of the ratings there. So overall feelings, any final thoughts about it?
I know this was more than likely a one-off. I highly doubt we're going to ever see any stories regarding, the two of them again. But I would like to see if there would be like any other regarding. I would like to see a little bit of a callback. I'd like to see a little bit more Apple family history, even if it doesn't specifically involve the the Apple parents.
Yeah, it's like I mean, as much as I would love to see like Pear Butter again and stuff, I really hope that
Yeah.
they kind of leave it as is, because it was such just a perfect, beautiful story about them that I would hate another episode to come along and focus on them again and take
Yeah.
that. Take
I don't
that
think we
away.
really need anything of that.
Yeah,
Their story, their tale's already been.
it was 7 seasons in the making, and there it is. So. Yeah, just again, overall, I don't really know if there's much else I can say. Concluding thoughts, it's just, again, top 3 maybe episodes in the show for me. It's competing with Heart's Warming Tale for me, but that episode has so much going for it too. But this one was just so wonderfully written and such an emotional, strong story, and delivered so much on it. It's some of the best music and just some of the best writing in the series, and feel bad for Discordant Harmony, but because that was a great episode in its own right. But yeah, this one. Yeah, I mean, we're only this is episode 13, so we're now at the halfway point through season 7 officially. So I still have a little bit more to go, but already this season has already been put up there with season 5 for me. Won't know until later if it tops it, but for me, season 5 has always just, again, had great writing as season 6 as still, and had great characters, but it just had those very powerful episodes, and with all Starlight's stories and the time travel thing at the end, and episode 100, and the Mending Fences, and the Princess's Stream of Magic Sheep, and I could go on and on about all these very big and powerful episodes. And Thanks for the Memories, the first episode that really kind of deals with death more or less. Just has some really big, powerful episodes in this. And we're only halfway through season 7 here, and we've already gotten so much of those kinds of episodes. A lot of them from Joanne and Christina themselves. And so I'm definitely enjoying where they're taking this season, and I'm really, really looking forward to see where we go in the second half of this season with them at the helm here. So, yep, that'll about draw us to a conclusion here for this Triple E episode. A little bit extended, a little over 2 hours, so we could have gone longer, but I think we were pretty good about getting to the points we wanted to make pretty quickly. So, just season 7. I mean, it's hard to think that this show is now 7 seasons in, 7 years in, and yet I still think it's having one of its best seasons. In terms of episodes, I feel bad for anyone who might have kind of got bored of the series or whatnot, or moved on, because I really do feel like they're missing some of the best episodes of the show, at least in my opinion.
But see, this is really an upward swing, really. This episode manages to top some of the other popular season 7 episodes. I mean, we've had Discordant Harmony, we've had Rock Solid Friendship, we've had Royal Problem. I mean, as it is, I mean, A Candlelight Wedding Part 2, Return of Harmony Part 2, and even the 2 for Twilight's Kingdom were 9.4 rated out of 10 out on IMDb. And with
really,
this one,
Candlelight Wedding was that high?
Yeah.
That actually surprised me, because I always saw that as a more divisive episode. Or divisive episode, I should say.
Yeah. But yeah, with this one sitting at 9.6, this one's sitting king of the heap right at this point. So this kind of says a lot for the series, and I think we really have nowhere to go from here but up.
Yeah, I mean, so many other series, they'll at the very least slowly declining quality throughout the years, but MLP has been, I think, doing the opposite. I mean, it already started off really strong with a really strong first 2 seasons, but I think they've really found their footing and having, now are able to try so much more stories that you wouldn't be able to do in those first 2 seasons, and have so much more freedom to do those stories. That I just think the show is one of the few that has really gotten better with age so far. And I'm looking forward to the rest of season 7 and season 8 and the movie. And more Pusher Girls.
The film's coming out later this month. Yeah, I wish later this year.
Wishful thinking there. No, watch. Somehow Canada's going to air the movie early. I don't know how, but they're going to find a way.
It's not Canada and Australia.
Yeah. my god. So, well, anyway, thank you all. Stick around for more stuff tonight. But thank you all for joining us for Tripoli today in this little longer episode. As I mentioned yesterday, I'll mention here again in terms of our plans going forward in case you missed it. This was episode, I meant to mention this at the beginning, but I didn't. This was episode number 99 of Tripoli here. I can't believe it's been that many episodes and that long. But thank you for sticking with us and supporting us for these 99 episodes. And means the next episode will be episode number 100. So we're going to be having that as a special Saturday episode this Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, the time we would normally have CQ riffs. We'll have a special episode 100 episode that we're in the process of planning right now. So make sure you come and stick around after the new MLP episode this weekend at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time for our 100th Tripoli episode. You don't want to miss it. And then, of course, we'll be back at our normal time next Tuesday to talk about Fame and Misfortune, episode number 14 of Season 7 that is premiering this weekend. We'll be talking about that next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time as well. And I haven't had any time to plan any of this, but I am still hoping to have another This Weekend Pony episode this coming Monday as well at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time for all the news that's kind of come out this last week. It's been a really crazy busy week, and I'm supposed to be on vacation this week, so hopefully we'll be getting to the next week. Keep a look at our announcements channel and Twitter and our calendar for any updates regarding that. But I'm still, as of right now, planning on having that. So anyway, thank you all so much for joining us for this. It's been a lot of fun. I've been waiting to talk about this episode so much since Saturday, and I'm sure some of you who might have caught the earlier Australian releases might have been waiting even longer. So it's nice to finally for us all to be able to discuss it. So thanks for joining us, and I'll see you all on Saturday. Bye bye.
Take care,
Later,
folks.
folks.